The Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by the Money Hour radio show, Saturday afternoons at 3 on AM 560, The Answer. Brought to you by Pearshell Financial Group.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. America's cities were on the docket on day one of the RNC, beginning with Kim Klasik, who is the GOP congressional candidate running for the seat, the vacancy created by Elijah Cummings' death. She's running against Kwesi Mfume, former NAACP head, to create that viral video we talked about last week on this show, and she had another viral moment as far as I'm concerned. Very tight 2 minutes that she offered to get the evening rolling.
My name is Kim Klasik, and I'm running for Congress in Maryland's 7th District. And like Shirley Chisholm, I'm unbought and unbossed. Let me remind you, the Democrats have controlled this part of Baltimore City for over 50 years, and they have run this beautiful place right into the ground. Abandoned buildings, liquor stores on every corner, drug addicts, guns on the street, that's now the norm in many neighborhoods. You'd think Maryland taxpayers would be getting a whole lot since our taxes are out of control. Instead, we're paying for decades of incompetence and corruption. Sadly, the same cycle of decay exists in many of America's Democrat-run cities. And yet the Democrats still assume that black people will vote for them, no matter how much they let us down and take us for granted. We're sick of it. We're not going to take it anymore. The days of blindly supporting the Democrats are coming to an end. In Baltimore, we have the highest number of black Republicans in the entire country running for office this election cycle. Joe Biden believes we can't think for ourselves, that the color of someone's skin dictates their political views. We're not buying the lies anymore. You and your party have neglected us for far too long. We want safety in our neighborhoods. We want to make the most of the federal opportunity zone I'm standing in right now in West Baltimore. We want higher paying jobs and more business opportunities. We want lower taxes. We want school choice. We want a chance to get ahead, not just get by. That's what President Trump promised, and that's what President Trump delivered.
That was very solid. She's just a very good communicator, very succinct and to the point. It's very clear. And I hope she's right that those days are coming to an end where you can just expect that black Americans will support Democrats at a 90% clip. Nikki Haley also addressed this in part, took it from a different angle, which is good, which is to talk about the other Black lives that matter that aren't talked about.
That's why it's so tragic to see so much of the Democratic Party turning a blind eye towards riots and rage. The American people know we can do better. And of course we value and respect every black life. The black cops who've been shot in the line of duty, they matter. The black small business owners who've watched their life's work go up in flames, they matter. The black kids who've been gunned down on the playground, their lives matter too. And their lives are being ruined and stolen by the violence on our streets. It doesn't have to be like this.
And that is not something you're hearing from Governor Evers in Wisconsin. It's not something you're hearing from local officials. They're basically doing what you've seen in other big cities, which is full-on pander to the barbarians. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke, a gentleman known to be succinct and to the point as well.
Yes.
Sheriff Clarke, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Dan, Amy, it's my pleasure.
I should also mention your book as well, Cop Under Fire, Moving Beyond Hashtags of Race, Crime, and Politics for a Better America. Give us your view on what you've heard from, since it's, you're basically near your old stomping grounds there in Milwaukee County. I know you're still up there. Your reaction to what's happening in Kenosha and the response from the mayor, from the governor, from the elected officials.
First of all, you can keep up with me on my website, americasheriff.com. My website has been redesigned.
Okay.
I talk about a lot of these things there.
Okay.
We're getting the usual political speak. When you deal with politicians, you get political behavior, and most political behavior doesn't really serve people well. I like what Nikki Haley said. I just listened to the clip. That's the stuff that I point out, that, everyone on the left and I know some people, they say, well, let's not make this political. It is very political. It is extremely political, and to think that it's not is dangerously naive. So you have the Wisconsin governor coming out, jumping to conclusions. He doesn't know any of the facts. He admitted that, but then he goes and he pops off at the mouth and he pours gas on a smoldering grass fire. Okay, totally irresponsible. I said this yesterday. When you're some street turd, you can talk like that. If you're Al Sharpton, Sean King, we expect that sort of irresponsible rhetoric coming out of their mouths. But when you're a governor, when you're a mayor, and you hold some other high-profile position, you have to act responsibly. You calm the waters. You don't fan the flames. So I'm not surprised at this. And this isn't because Tony Evers is inexperienced. This is his first term. He's in over his head, all right? And he's in this for the same reasons that many of the other the people running for these Democrat positions are in it for. They want to fan the flames of racial animosity, to stoke up and energize the black vote. They realize, and this is what I think is sick, they realize that it gets very emotional when it comes to this sort of stuff, issues of race for black people, all right, because of a long history. But we've come a long way. And instead of talking about how this country has gotten better, what do? They go back to the days that, there aren't too many people around today that were living back then anyway. So you get these police shootings, and they've always served as an incendiary device for the left to stoke up anger, to stoke up rage within the black community. Highly irresponsible. We've seen this before. We're going to continue to see it at least through November.
Yeah, but don't you? I'm fearful that Kenosha is going to become the new Portland, because I know a lot of Antifa flew into Chicago, then drove up to Kenosha yesterday. And they're not going to stop until these police officers, they claim, are arrested, that they're going to protest every single night. And even BLM Lake County, Illinois, which I didn't know they had a chapter, they've set up tents. They're staying there, too, until this is over. What is the governor doing the right thing, calling in the National Guard? But should he just shut down transportation into Kenosha?
Well, that takes more of a long-range plan and more thought behind it, where you start doing things like that. But here's how you can end this riot. Look, I handled a riot in 2016, 2015, summer of 2015. It lasted one night. Why? We had a plan to succeed. We had a plan. I made it very clear. I had a news conference, and I said law and order is going to be restored. And the following day, I said what you saw last night on the streets of Milwaukee will not happen again, and it didn't. Here's how you do it. You marshal all of your resources. You get your commanders together, and you put together a plan to succeed, a plan to control the streets. And then you have to go out and operationalize that plan using all your resources. You have to have enough boots on the ground to get this done. All right, you put the curfew in place. By the way, in Milwaukee, I couldn't get the mayor to put the curfew in place, but they did that in Kenosha. They don't have enough people. Evers sends in the National Guard. Amy and Dad, he sent 125 National Guard folks. 125. That's a joke. That's not nearly enough to control what we've seen go on in the streets in Kenosha for the last couple nights. I said a minimum of 1,000 guardsmen. 1,000, a minimum, because you have to overwhelm the other side's ability to bring the fight. And you can't do that with just a few people. They don't have enough police, so you have to use the Guard as a force multiplier. Look, I know what I'm talking about here. The things that I'm mentioning to you two are not happening in Portland. They weren't happening in Seattle. The police were in retreat. They were told to stand down. Those orders are unconscionable, to put a law enforcement officer in harm's way out there and then tell them to stand down as property damage is occurring. Cops are getting hit in the heads with bricks. Citizens and other cops are being injured. Businesses going up in flames. And you're going to tell the police to stand down? That is unconscionable.
The other side of the criminal justice system, too, prosecution. Of course, we've had this challenge in Chicago with Kim Foxx. She's one of those state's attorneys or district attorneys around the country that believes in a culture of non-prosecution. We have Cy Vance, the Manhattan DA, arguing against broken windows in the New York Daily News yesterday. And so I wonder if you think that broken windows policing and prosecuting is the path back to civilization for these big cities, whether some of the ideologues in charge want to believe it or not.
Without a doubt, it's the only way you can get the attention of the criminal element, to let them know that there are going to be quick and severe sanctions and punishment for their criminal behavior. This catch and release doesn't work. This assists the criminal element. The same with the prosecutor out in Portland, who's releasing thousands of people with no charges. What I would do is I would get together with the U.S. Attorney's Office, especially under Bill Barr, who wants to help, and I would start, when these arrests are made, I would send them the federal route. Let them go for federal charges. There are plenty of laws on the federal in the federal code to deal with this sort of behavior. There is a federal inciting a riot or participating in one statute that calls for 5 years in federal prison upon conviction. You have a better chance of certainty in terms of these arrests that you make, that something's going to happen to them. If you send them through the state attorney's office right now, the Cook County State Attorney, nothing's going to happen. Everybody has to be on the same page. That has to be part of the plan, too.
I wanted to get your reaction to something that Jameel Hill said. She's not just a sportscaster anymore. She's been elevated to a writer at The Atlantic, so we have to take her seriously, I'm told. She tweeted out, reading Isabel Wilkerson's new book, Cased, and if you were of the opinion that the United States wasn't nearly as bad as Nazi Germany, how wrong you are. That's the response you get from the deep thinkers at places like The Atlantic. We're Nazi Germany. And this is the rationalization you're hearing from Black Lives Matter activists, as well as other professional agitators, that America is irredeemable. It's a bad place. You heard it at the DNC last week. And so this is justified. This is what Nicole Hannah-Jones of the 1619 Project calls symbolic takings and the like.
Well, it's all nonsense. First of all, Jamel Hill's an idiot. We give her too much credit. She's a sports journalist, for heaven's sakes. Doesn't know anything beyond the final score of a game and who hit a jumper to win the game. And for us to listen and take, political advice from someone like that, I'm embarrassed by something like that. I'm ashamed to even be commenting on something that comes out of the mouth, the garbage that comes out of the mouth of Jamel Hill, for heaven's sakes.
Well, this turns around and gets repeated by people in actual elective offices with actual political power, actual law enforcement responsibilities,
Well, that's why I said when you deal with politicians, she's not, but when you say it's repeated by people in political positions, when you deal with politicians, you get political behavior. Most of these individuals, they're not really deep thinkers either, if you will. They're opportunists, all right? Mm-hmm. What's going to get them some votes? What's going to stoke people up? And then they just regurgitate what somebody else says. None of them have their own original thought on this stuff that makes any sense based on any research and data. They can't cite, this site here that I read, some book, not from some race baiter, but by some intellectual individual and recite something from there. Not many of these politicians can hear. By the way, your Chicago mayor, Lightfoot, was commenting on the shooting in Kenosha yesterday when you had 66 people shot, leaving 5 dead on Chicago streets. Since Memorial Day weekend, this is just weekend violence, Friday through Sunday, 817 people have been shot, leaving 141 dead. And your mayor is commenting on something that happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin. She's whistling past the graveyard.
Yeah, well, she calls that progress, actually. We've averaged 83 shootings per week. We're up near 500 murders so far this year. But she's an expert. She has lots of commentary to offer on national politics,
she's a darling of MSNBC.
On COVID, on so all kinds of things, on Kenosha. As somebody who's been in Milwaukee County for many decades now, knows the community very well, how does this play? How does what we're seeing in Kenosha play, do you think, in the suburbs of Milwaukee, among the law-abiding in Wisconsin generally? Because obviously this is against the backdrop of a presidential election.
Yeah, well, it's starting to spread, and that's what you're seeing here. By the way, I'm born and raised in Milwaukee County. But it's going to spread. It's like water. It seeks its own level. Okay, you can only hold water out for so long when you get floodwaters and things like that, water trying to get into your basement, you do the best you can, but at some point the water is going to find its way in. And so the suburban areas around Milwaukee are starting to pay attention, because some of these riots and these violent demonstrations are now starting to come out to their retail areas and their neighborhoods. So they're very concerned. And that's why I said you have to get your arms around this damn thing early to keep it from spreading.
Yeah. And, Dan and I have had the pleasure of meeting you and speaking to you again on and off on the show. Have you thought about running for governor of Wisconsin? Because
I keep hearing that and I chuckle, because, first of all, this is not about me. My number one mission right now is for freedom and liberty in America. That's the mission I'm on. I'm still speaking all across the country, and I'm here to defend the profession of law enforcement and the men and women who go out in harm's way every day to keep their communities safe. And then I'm trying to get Donald Trump reelected. So I'm trying to take care of first things first. It's not about me. I won't make it about me. I'm flattered by that stuff, but I got these other missions and jobs I'm trying to accomplish now. I never say never, but that's not on the radar screen right now.
And are you going to deliver, since it's your responsibility, are you going to deliver Wisconsin for Trump?
We're going to do everything we can to make sure that he gets across the finish line.
He's not going to say no.
We're working our rear ends off here.
Good for you.
I know it. He is former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke, author of Cop Under Fire, Moving Beyond Hashtags of Race, Crime, and Politics for a Better America. Also, his website where you can follow him and his writings on these topics we've been discussing, americassheriff.com. Sheriff Clarke, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
And Amy, it's my pleasure.
All right, thank you. And we'll have you on again. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about it, Dan and Amy are talking about it. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Liberty Mutual Insurance Company presents and Doug.
Fasten your seatbelts, folks. We'll be prepared for takeoff.
Limu, how cool is this? Your first time flying. Oh, I didn't mean... Listen, Limu, you might not be able to fly, but you do something even cooler. You tell strangers that Liberty Mutual customizes their car insurance.